Welcome to Stephen Frank's Sister. This is Pamela Jean.
Hi, and you're with Samantha Bennington, and we have a special guest, Keala Kennelly.
Hi, guys.
Woo! I'm so excited you're finally here in LA with us.
I'm so stoked to be here. This is way better than doing this on Skype or something.
It's so much better and so personal. Keala is one of my best friends, and even though we've known each other for about approximately 4 years, it's been a huge positive impact on both of our lives. This is one of my most treasured friendships. So to have her and Pamela together, and we're doing this podcast in Malibu, and yesterday was a 2-year milestone for our family of Chester Bennington, my ex-husband, my son's father, from Lincoln Park, who had died by suicide 2 years ago on July 20th of 2017. And for all of you out there that were wondering how we got through it this year, is we just kept it nice and quiet and private and sacred with our family. And also our son had a nice healthy distraction doing art in Comic-Con with Pamela while I was here with Keala. So now we have
weekend.
great positive love vibes, but still we here are all survivors of depression, suicide, and Pamela and I really right out the gate agreed that when we first formed our podcast that we really wanted to bring in guest speakers. And what's so exciting for me is not just pulling from my friendship pool, is by also pulling from my friendship pool of professionals who are, I guess, in the same type of shoes as my exes. So like I always say, it doesn't discriminate against fame, what you do for a living, gender. And Keala, can you as a athlete, the top female surfer in the world champion in my house. What's up? Hey, we're so very proud of you.
But that's just it, right? Like, people think that, people that have success or are at the top of their game don't suffer from depression, don't go through, like, mental and emotional anguish, because a lot of times what they see is just you holding the trophy or you on top of the world, hoisting up the big novelty check. Yeah, they just see you winning at life, and they don't understand, like, there's a lot of moments where you're losing and you're so low. And
if you're traveling around the world, you're meeting new people, there's hotties left and right, you're sunshine, you're in the ocean, and it's still, when you have depression, doesn't make that any better, I guess.
I mean, we do have it better in the sense that we are outside and all of those things you mentioned, yeah, but we can't always be outside doing our sport. You can't be out there doing it at night. Then for an example, like, I do big wave surfing, so I get that really gnarly adrenaline rush from riding these huge waves, and you can't do that all the time. You're actually waiting on massive storm systems to actually go ride these waves. So I'm not the only one that suffers from this, but a lot of the big wave surfers, when there hasn't been a big storm system in a few months, and, like, there's no big swells to chase, they all fall into these depressions. Like, I've noticed with myself, kind of right as winter ends and you go into springtime and it's not quite summer yet, so you're not getting those southern hemisphere swells yet, and the northern hemisphere swells have kind of slowed radically down, and you kind of have this in-between time in the springtime. I go through a gnarly depression every year.
Wow, that's so interesting. I'm thinking, so it's kind of like really, really high highs and then, like, low lows, because you're not kind of getting that endorphin rush. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
When was the first moment that you realized you had, and tell us, what is it that you do fight?
I mean, I've struggled with depression all my life, ever since I was a little kid. And as a teenager, just constantly, lot of thoughts of suicide as a teenager and young adult, and it just continued. And I didn't, I kind of thought, like, the first time I thought about killing myself was like 6 years old, and it was because I became cognizant of the fact that I was a female and not a male, and I was just, like, so disappointed that I was a girl, because I saw that it just meant there was so much less opportunities for me in this life, and that was just so disappointing, and so that was the first time. And then I think being a closeted homo was definitely really hard. There was a lot of internalized homophobia and self-hatred that came with that. So then I thought, like, okay, that's the problem. It's because I hate myself because I'm gay. It's because I'm living this double life and being disingenuous and hiding in the closet. That's why I have all these really gnarly feelings and mental anguish, and that's why I'm still having these like thoughts of suicide and you know. But then even after I came out as a lesbian, and you know, of course it was rough at first, but as I became accepted and stuff, but then still would fall into these depressions, it's like, okay, it's not that either.
Right.
So what is it? Why does it keep recurring? Why does it keep coming back?
So what were the steps you took, or how did you find out how to be better and not live in that funky state?
Well, I kept getting misdiagnosed. Like I'd actually been misdiagnosed multiple times with depression or situational depression.
And was this from your parents, or how did it happen? Like, when do you feel like your parents started to see this, or did they start
I don't
to
feel
see
like
this?
my parents did see it. My parents didn't act shocked when I told them I was gay, even though I was the biggest tomboy ever and was like running around the playground at 5 years old trying to kiss all the girls. It was just like they acted completely oblivious and like shocked when I came out to them as gay. It was like, are you serious?
Yeah, but living in the islands, coming from Hawaii and Kauai, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they wouldn't catch on to it like as if you were in New York or Chicago.
I think they were just in
or
denial.
no?
I think they were just in denial, and then I think
Okay.
they were in denial about the depressive episodes too.
Right. Plus,
know?
it wasn't so talked about us when we were all growing up, and you're younger.
No, I
than
still don't
Pamela
think
and I are.
I still think people don't talk about it. You know, they
Yeah, I think you're right.
They brush it under the rug, and it's not something
They don't want it to be their kid.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the same thing as like homosexuality. It's like they don't want
like
their
they
kid.
did something wrong.
Yeah,
that's how my parents treated it. Like they did something wrong.
It somehow reflects on them.
Exactly.
If there's anybody in the family that has a mental health issue or is a homosexual or you know anything like that.
Now, knowing you as an adult and you're doing so awesome, and now you can speak on behalf like of survivors. Talk about a survivor.
Yeah.
I mean, being young, figuring out your sexuality at a very young age, fighting depression at 6 years old. I couldn't imagine my son thinking that and knowing that or not knowing that at 6 years old, and then having the challenges of being a female in a male dominant sport, conquering that, fighting for equal pay. Wow. Women's rights, and also raising enough funds on this last competition.
We fought really hard to get equal pay within the World Surf League, and they announced equal pay for all female athletes across all platforms in September, which was like a huge win. But there's other competitions that are not sanctioned by the World Surf League that don't have to abide by that kind of ruling, and so there was one in Mexico that we all wanted to participate in, but the prize money was like it was like the women were going to make 36 cents on the dollar of what the male athletes were going to. And so we all wanted to compete, but we didn't want to support contests that, you know, were the equality was just, there was such a disparity in pay. So I had the great idea of let's just crowdfund the rest. Let's see if we can come up with the additional money to make it equal, you know. And so my friend Bianca, my colleague who's another competitor, actually followed through and did a GoFundMe page, and we raised money within 48 hours. I mean, it was amazing. It was
fantastic. Unbelievable.
And it was also just a really great social experiment for us, because number one, it was like, do the female big wave surfers have a fan base? Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. Are people interested in watching us? Do they want to see us compete? Yes. Mm-hmm. Do they want to see us be getting equal prize money? Yes. And they were willing to donate to make that happen. So that felt really good, and that was really positive. And just being able to bring that to Latin America, where women make so much less than the men, just to be able to show them what that looks like and be able to acknowledge that on stage was like a really big deal, and I think just so positive.
Do you think you could have done this 5-10 years ago with fighting through depression? Because I feel like it kicked depression's ass in its ass.
Well, I think medication really kicked my depression's ass, like the proper medication. because, like I was saying before, I kept getting diagnosed with depression or situational depression, and I fell into like this really gnarly depression right after my 40th birthday. It was just like a really bad one, and it came out of nowhere, and I was just in bed for days. I was like, crying, just couldn't eat. Like, it was really bad.
And folks, I was there for her birthday.
Yeah,
and I had no clue. She put on the greatest smile at dinner.
Oh my God, I was suffering so hard.
I think it's really important that you're sharing that, because a lot of people don't do that. I mean, I know when I've been down, it's like you don't want to kind of show that side to your friends because you don't want to burden them with that.
Exactly. And sadly, the only person I burden with that kind of stuff is the person closest to me, so my partner. So my poor girlfriend, she busted her ass to throw this huge party for me, got all my friends involved, and like
we were all flying in.
Everybody was flying in from places. She got a hotel suite, like decorated. Like, she really went out of her way to try and throw me a big birthday party. But it was just like I had already fallen into my spiral of depression, so it was like nothing was gonna make me happy. And so when everybody's like jumped out and said surprise, it was just like I was like, oh fuck, and then it was like, shit, I have to smile through this because everybody's made the effort, but like when it was all said and done, like she had to deal with how I really was, which was like not happy.
And now that you're kind of always going to have to deal with depression, be mindful of it, but you're outside looking in, what would you say to them if they're in that place? Like, how'd you get out of that night?
So I didn't get out of it. I went back home to Hawaii, and that's when I fell into an even deeper depression. And then it's funny, the timing, because I got the email from Sophie Goldschmidt at WSL saying that they were about to announce equal pay, and that I've been fighting for equal pay for my entire career. So to see that like that was going to be a reality, I should have been like ecstatic. And my first thought, because I was in one of my depressions, actually like one of my worst ones ever, was, all right, well, I've probably served my purpose here. I should probably kill myself now. Like, that was my thought. And then I just went like, holy shit, like there's something really wrong if that's that's like my reaction to something that should be so great, happy, so positive. Same with my birthday, when all my friends are jumping out and saying surprise, and the emotion I should feel is happy. And when you're not feeling the emotion that you should be feeling, and you're actually feeling like the opposite or just something else, it's just really confusing. And it's like, okay, there's something wrong.
Right.
This is not normal, And so when that happened, my girlfriend actually convinced me to like call my parents, because she's like, I can't be the only person that knows that this is what's going on with you right now. Like, you've been in bed for days and crying. Like, I can't be the only person that like, I'm worried about you. If something happens to you, like, I can't be the only one that knew that this is where you were at, so please, like, call your family and let them know what's going on. So I called my mom, and I was like, hey mom, and I kind of explained to her, like, I've been in this like depression for about a week, and what's going on. And she was like, oh well honey, you might just have a chemical imbalance. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And then she's like, well, you should talk to grandma about that. And I was like, why?
You're like, you look like shocked on your face right now.
Like, why should I talk to grandma about that? And she's like, well, her sister, my mom's sister, she struggled with stuff. And I was just like, huh.
Nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked to me about it, I feel like it's like those things where it's like
nobody talks about it.
Nobody talks about it, right? So then I called my grandma, and I was like, who I hardly ever talked to before this, So I called my grandma, and I was like, hey grandma, and I explained to her, and asked her about her sister, and she's like, oh yeah, my sister was like off the charts bipolar. She wasn't on her lithium. She was just like flying off the rails. And I was just like, what? Like, how am I 40 years old and this is the first I'm hearing of this? Like,
right.
What the?
And you have a very close family.
Yeah, my family's like really close. So it's just like, why is this new information for me? And then, I hung up the phone with my grandma, and there was a part of me that was like, first I just started sobbing because I was just like, I don't want to have a mental illness. I don't want to have a label on me of being bipolar or whatever. There's a part of me that's just like devastated and scared and shamed.
Yeah.
But then there's this whole other part of me that was like relieved that there was like something I could call it. You know what I mean? Because, or just, something I could now then research and be like, okay, or just something I could point to and be like, that's what it is. Because I felt like there was something wrong for such a long, all my life.
Right.
That it was like, it was nice to just have an understanding of what it might be. And then, of course you can just get on Google and, I devoured everything I could about it.
I want to point out something. When your girlfriend said to call and tell a family member, that is something that Pamela and I talk about in several podcasts, because there are so many people out here in this world that a friend will share, but they're not equipped psychologically. They're not trained. They're not equipped emotionally to handle that. So that was actually from, not that I'm an expert, but I feel like we're becoming one very quickly. That is one of the top things that somebody should guide the other person to do. So in the event that somebody is really having a hard time, that is a way to approach it in your household or at school or at your workplace, wherever you may be with others. But that's our whole point, is to
get
really
family members involved, get other people involved.
Yeah, it's like there's like such a shame about it, and you don't want to burden people, and so it's just like you keep it to yourself, but then it's like you're not going to get that help, and then people don't know.
Right.
Did you ever feel like, God, I'm spiraling and now people think I'm crazy?
No, because I was really good at hiding it, and I would just isolate myself a lot. You know what I mean? Like when I was like, because I would just negative spiral, and like negative thoughts would just ruminate in my head all the time. And some, when I could hear my dialogue, my outward dialogue going negative, and I could just, I could see people picking up on my negative vibe, I would go, okay, you're a fucking buzzkill. You need to like separate yourself and like go be alone for a while, because you don't want to like, you don't want this like negativity spilling out of you. Nobody's gonna like you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Did you ever?
So you were really afraid to show it.
I was just wondering.
I only really showed it to like people, like usually just my poor girlfriends. Like every relationship I've been in, every romantic relationship I've been in, my partner's taken the burden of like seeing that negative side of me that I won't show my friends, won't show my family.
But don't you think, like, something that I've been able to do is I can notice when other people are faking it. So I wonder if there's other athletes out there that that you think suffer with this, and sometimes you can tell when someone is not faking it to the sense of, but they're trying to
mask.
They're trying to mask their feelings. They're being happy, and they're, you know what I mean, type. They're not, I don't want to say being authentic, but they're trying to get through, and you're feeling like something's off. Do you ever feel like, have you ever felt like that with any of the other athletes that you know?
I feel like that. It doesn't even
matter.
Have to be an athlete.
Yeah.
I feel like that with people, And then there's other people you look. That's why I knew there was something wrong with me, because I was just like, there's certain people you look at and you think like they might be struggling like you, and then there's other people you look at and you're just like, they don't have a struggle in the world. Like they look so relaxed and happy all the time, and like they're not tense and like I was just anxious all the time. I was just like restless and agitated all the time, and I was just like, it was just so hard. I just felt like such an internal struggle.
Did you have to try different doctors, like what was it that worked?
I was mostly going to therapists. It wasn't until I actually like heard from my grandma that bipolarity runs in our family, and then my girlfriend kind of helped support me emotionally enough to go actually see a psychiatrist, because that is like the next big step that most people are really afraid to take. Because I think up until that point, like everybody's kind of like, oh, I'm in, I see a therapist, like that's pretty okay, that's pretty normal,
generic.
yeah, that's kind of like whatever at this point. But like to actually go see a psychiatrist, like that's kind of admitting there's more than just I want to talk about my problems or my divorce or my whatever. It's like that's like admitting to yourself and others that like there's more that's wrong there, and
And I think that's where the stigma comes in, is because you don't want to admit that,
right,
because you're like, now I'm different, now I'm like handicapped, now I have to admit that
there's
this
something
is
wrong
yeah
with
there's
me.
something
There's
wrong
something
with
wrong
me.
with me. If I go see a psychiatrist, I have a mental
Yeah.
health issue and there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't want to admit that to yourself, and you definitely don't want other people. Like there's such a shame. Like
There is.
attached
That's a
to
good
it.
word.
There's
Yes.
just such a shame attached to it. Whereas seeing a therapist, like there's like gonna be a little bit of shame attached to it, but
Yeah.
it's like so accepted now, and so many people go to therapists
For
now.
everything.
But,
Yeah.
for everything. But
It's
like
like having a trainer.
Yeah.
it's like having a personal trainer,
Yeah.
basically. But to go see a psychiatrist, that's different.
But it shouldn't be. It should be just like when you get cancer, you go see an oncologist.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You don't see a regular doctor. You go
Right.
see a specialist. It
specialist.
should just be a specialist. Maybe we should just come up with another name so people can,
I know.
So
not
when
see it that way.
When I heard from my grandma that ran in my family, I made an appointment to see a psychiatrist, and of course they couldn't see me for like a few weeks. But in that time,
Lordy.
I got to just, now that I had a direction of where to look, I just went online and like read, got books, and I like watched YouTube videos, and I watched doctors lecture about it. And like the more I learned about it, the kind of better and less alone I felt with it.
Probably less afraid as well.
Less afraid, yeah, just like, and then what I learned is that, bipolar is a spectrum, kind of like autism, kind of like sexuality, where it's this really huge spectrum between like unipolar and then bipolar 1, and then you have way out on this spectrum, bipolar 1 is like where it ends. And that's when people think of people that are manic depressive or bipolar, they're thinking of bipolar 1 people because their symptoms are exaggerated and so much easier to diagnose, because they're the ones that have the super manic episodes and hear voices, and like they're kind of have,
almost schizophrenic.
yeah,
right?
they're the
Like,
ones that have the kind of like symptoms that make you go, that person's crazy,
Right.
But as you get closer to unipolars, you get the bipolar 2, the bipolar NOS, the soft bipolar, and all of that. It becomes much harder to diagnose because the symptoms don't present as exaggerated, and so many people get misdiagnosed as just unipolar depression, because when you have like bipolar 2 or soft bipolar, your high, your mania is not actually a mania. It's like a subdued version of mania. They call it hypomania. So it presents as like, I just have an elevated mood today. I'm feeling really good and I'm getting a lot of stuff done. It's not something that you would go, I need to go see a doctor about this. You know what I mean? You actually feel like you're your best version of yourself. So it's not ever anything where you're gonna go, there's something wrong with me. So that, and then you have depression, like the low lows, but then there's this other side of the high, which is the negative high, because the positive high is like, I feel really good today. I'm getting a lot of things done. I'm talking really fast and I have a lot of ideas. But then there's this whole other high that's the negative high. And when I started reading those symptoms, that's when a light bulb went off of like, oh my God, I completely relate to this. So the negative high was like anxiety, agitation, irritability, restlessness, feeling like you have all this energy but like don't know what to do with it, and you just feel like uncomfortable inside yourself.
It's a great description.
So when I started reading these symptoms, I was like, oh my God, this is me all the time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I the more I learned and read about it, the more
right.
the better I felt and the more I understood it. And then so by the time I actually went into see my psychiatrist, I'd pretty much self-diagnosed myself at that point. So,
Right, but then they got you working on stuff. How long did it take for you to feel better?
So I went and saw the psychiatrist, and there's no you can't like take a blood test. There's no way to like check for bipolar. You know, you go in, you tell them your family history. They ask you a lot of different questions to kind of like, you know, gauge certain things. And then if they think that you might be somewhere on the bipolar spectrum, the next thing they do is they will start you on bipolar medication and just see how that affects you. So, and they start you on like a super low dose. You have to titrate up very, very slowly. So they put me on lamotrigine, which is one of the newer bipolar. It's actually an anti-seizure medication, but it has had really outstanding results in people that are bipolar. So now it's become the go-to bipolar medication. So they put me on that, just 25 milligrams for the first month. I think after about 3 weeks, I noticed a significant difference just in my outlook on life.
Is it specifically like how you react to things? Like, can you give us an example?
Before I found medication, my brain would just negative spiral over like little things too.
Okay.
So I would go like, let's say I would just go for a surf or something, and maybe I didn't have a great surf. I like blew a couple waves, whatever. So I'd come in and I'd be like, you know, my first thought would be like, oh, like you surfed really bad today. And my second thought would be, that's because you're a kook. You know, and my third thought was being like, well, that's why you didn't win the world title in 2003, and that's why you have no sponsors, and it would just spiral into like, I hate myself and I want to die, like so quickly.
It's a good example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's just like, whoa,
so
that was
extreme from like,
yeah, it's like I went from like, oh, I just had a bad surf to like, I fucking hate myself and I want to die. You know, so quick, and I'm just, you know. So now with the medication, it's like I might have the first thought, oh, I had a bad surf today. But then, you know, I might have one negative thought and I might follow it to like a second negative thought. But before I can like go to the third and fourth and start spiraling, it's almost like something goes, hey, what's over there? And it just like interferes. It runs an interference, and then I just can't, it doesn't allow me to spiral anymore.
You allow yourself those distractions.
I think the meds just helps
balance you to see other things.
Yeah. Like before I got on meds.
Because it's more normal. Like today, even like this morning before we did this podcast, you know, even it doesn't matter if you're depressed or not. We all have good days, bad days. And I definitely I've been able to have healthy distractions today with the timing of everything. Not surprising to all you listeners. However, other things, just like other life things, come into play even at sensitive times, so they become triggers. And I'm aware if I'm upset by it. I'm aware of how I feel about it. I can feel about it. I know if I'm going down a rabbit hole, which I think everyone does, no matter what they are. It's the ability to allow yourself that, okay, let it go for now. There's nothing you can do. There's an ability of knowing your personality and which we discussed today about me, and I call myself a normie.
What does that mean?
That means, I don't, which you've never done either. I've never known you to mask things with drugs or alcohol.
Oh no! Before I got on meds, I used to.
Did?
Oh, I self-medicated a lot.
Because I never even saw that.
Oh no! Yeah, no, I would self-medicate a lot.
Oh well, so I eat my words and stand corrected. I never ever saw that with you.
Really? No, I spent a lot of years self-medicating.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe if we were like drinking at an after party, and I mean that to me seemed normal what you do.
Well,
so I didn't know
any.
You know, I've never seen you.
No, I used to
norm.
feel so bad inside myself, and just with so much like anxiety and agitation that like, you know, you want anything to feel better, so you will look around and it's like, oh, is there like alcohol? Will that make me feel better? And you'll start doing that, or like, you know, whatever it is, like.
But even I think for even like me today, I was just so upset about a situation, and I was just like, ugh, I just want a cocktail. I just want to chill out. But to me, not being an alcoholic or not having depression, I'm like, oh, that's normal. Wasn't that what? But I guess you have to know and really. I think
but you're having a cocktail.
Yeah,
maybe
too.
I'm
not drinking a bottle by
that's
myself.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's not something you're doing every day.
No, but it
it
is interesting, and the reason why I brought that little example up, you know, you can lie to everyone. When you start lying to yourself, the only person you will be hurting is yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I was so good at hiding it from my friends. Obviously, you didn't know for like years, and I was good at hiding it because I would isolate myself. You know, when I was getting bad, I would just pull away, which is actually makes then the loneliness will make it worse.
Right.
You know, so it's like to protect other people, you're actually like doing the opposite of what you should do, which is like ask people for help.